Sue is one of these remarkable women who went back to the university and got her horticulture design degree when she was raising 5 boys. It's pretty amazing to me that she succeeded with that. And she's had her own horticulture business for years. Along with that, she started studying Sogetsu Ikebana and has, I don't know what level you're at, 3 or 4?
The top of the 4th level.
She has gotten her teacher's certificates in Ikebana, and that's like going through another college course, because that's amazing. It takes you years to attain those levels. So we are actually in for a treat tonight to see her slides, and she's got a demonstration for us. It was also mentioned in the newsletter, in case you didn't take the time to read it, that she has participated for all of the 39 years of Art in Bloom. And she has chaired a number of other exhibitions like the Como Fall Ikebana Mum shows. And she teaches floral design at Colored Ramp. So, anything else?
I'm not a techie, so please bear with me tonight and have some patience, because it's a little bit.
But she does know her Ikebana and her plants. So if you got questions afterwards, please keep in mind and ask her.
Thank you.
Okay?
And you're not doing your meeting before me?
No.
Yeah, we'll have the meeting part after. But we have,
Thank you for your patience waiting for me, and for going through my slide program that isn't turning out the way I planned today. So what I want to start with is the basic design in Sogetsu, because in Ikebana, the major schools are Ikenobo, Ohara, and Sogetsu. And you can tell the schools by their basic designs, but when you get into freestyle, you really often can't. Ikenobo's is quite a bit different, but the other one is pretty similar. They think there's at least 400 schools or more of Ikebana, and often a son breaks off from the father's school. And Sogetsu started in 1927, and Sofu Teshigahara was the originator, and they considered him to be the Picasso of art in Japan. So he was very highly ranked to begin with. And he spent the next year creating the textbooks, and they've changed a little bit over time too, as the headmasters have changed also. And then about 40 years ago, we had one of his assistants came with him, and Hiroshi did the Dayton Bachman show, and we got to work with him. And what we got to do was take these scouring pads and cleaning everyone has these now? Cleaning the bamboo with scouring pads, and it was a very large construction. These are different lessons that we do to work with other materials, or different ways with the Ikebana, and might give you some ideas for the school that you may be doing yourself. But I think I'll start with the slides and then put my basic arrangement together after that. And what I want to do is just emphasize freestyle, because often people don't realize that can be Ikebana too. So this was a mom show at Como, and what someone did there with the fall colors, with a tall vase, which is called nagari, and that means thrown in style. And we often use crossbars to have the mechanics. We can have all kinds of designs, ideas for Ikebana, and if we can't make them stable, we're in trouble. So that's why we study so many years at it. Go on, please.
There we go.
So this is one from Art and Bloom this year, and one of our designers, and she was interpreting Chinese dress and did a very nice job with it, using the bamboo sticks in there. And it's a little bit more of a mass style there, and she is a Sogetsu arranger, and not all of these will be Sogetsu, so there'll be a variety of things, and we can do the next. This is Yoko Toda's, and she is a Sogetsu student, and she did a bust on the wall in the Art Institute. And as I told Lois Ann, we had 62,000 people come through Art and Bloom this year, breaking records.
Yeah.
Last year, it was 31,000. So if you know the parking,
Yeah.
you have to give everybody credit for attending, because parking is not easy. I started parking on 24th and Pillsbury, walking 7 blocks to the museum too. And unfortunately, the city sweeps the streets during Art and Bloom. So they shift streets every day to a different venue. And it's really challenging. So using nice colors in there and evergreens in that. So this is from Washington State in Woodinville. We have a master teacher who worked with Hiroshi way back 40 years ago at the Dayton Bachman Show, that comes through and teaches lessons when he leaves Japan to spend half the year on the East Coast of the country. And we study in a martial arts dojo, and there's different schools that come and people from many different areas along the West Coast especially. So we can go on from there. So I've given you a handout on some of the lessons that we study so that you can see other things that we can focus on besides the roses. But this is a Moribana style, which is a low style, and we often use just a kenzan for our mechanics. And they come in all different forms and sizes. And what I'm going to show in a few minutes is a basic style. But the Sogetsu School has a sun and moon kenzan, and the 2 different forms are the sun and the moon. And what's nice about it is it hooks together, so we can have an elongated set of needle holders. We call them needle holders in the United States, and they're lead. So I was washing them in our dishwasher, and my husband thinks I'm going to give him lead poisoning. So all my different shapes of kenzans are stored in the dishwasher, and we do dishes by hand. It's kind of like our garage that we store the dahlia tubers in. We've never had our car in it. I have 50 to 70 potted plants that we store with the dahlias in the winter. But what's so nice about this one is our branches can get very heavy, so we can turn the small one over and weight down the back of it. Or sometimes we're doing 2 different parts of an arrangement, like we just saw a minute or so back, and we can move it apart and do the larger portion and the smaller one. And then there is a little tool that we can take and bend the teeth back together if the branches have been too hard on it. So it's a very good tool to have. And when we use it in the vase, and this is a Moribana style vase, we put it in different positions. So when we get through this, I'll quickly do my basic arrangement for Sogetsu, the starting one. And that one, we put the kenzan close to the front edge. But in the summertime, we have a slanting style one, and it goes in the back corner, and then you see more water. And water is cooling. Because one of the classrooms that I was studying in Japan was a second floor classroom, and they had sliding doors, and outside was the garden with the running water and different things. And a lot of times in the summer, they don't have air conditioning, so things that are cooling that help you really do help a lot. So, and anytime you have any questions, please ask. And I do have a soft voice. If you're not hearing me, I say I do have 5 sons. I can raise it. So keep me informed. And then we'll work through this pretty good together. Thank you for being my teammate.
Sure.
So this one is in that back position, and we would be seeing more water. And there's different ways that you can cover kenzans. You can use rocks, you can use moss. Sometimes, like the season now with redbud, I would take the little petals of the redbud flowers off and float that in the water too. So you can play with it in different functions. That's not allowed in art and bloom because the kids can get into the water. Rocks can be thrown. And this year, I noticed I don't have my arrangement picture on there tonight on what I did. But I did an arrangement on Tuesday night, got up in the middle of the night kind of worrying about the new rules, realizing I might be breaking the new rules, which were saying 90% fresh and alive floral material. And I had a big vase and a big branch, so I redid my arrangement Wednesday morning. Last year, someone came, a new person, did a beautiful arrangement, but his vase broke. And it damaged part of the parquet flooring. So that's why our rules were much stricter this year. And I really didn't want to be turned down when I got to the museum, so I redid it. This is using 2 vases, using branches. I only have 1 or 2 rose pictures, and the one you'll kind of wonder about me. But this again gives a little bit different view and a different usage of the flowers, becoming more horizontal, not taking advantage of the height of the vase, so we can go horizontal too. And then using some evergreen type material. Now this one you might enjoy with bramble in there, but I don't remember exactly. This was about 2019, and I think it was when there were a lot of fires in Canada bringing smoke down because of the briquettes, the base of the arrangement. And this is very contemporary. It is Sogetsu. And then it had 3 different ages of the brambles, and that had meaning to the arrangement of different ages. You know, the youth, the middle age, and the older. And then the flower too, which makes me think is probably representing flame. And this is rose petals. So like I said, I might have 2 referring to roses, and this one is the rose petals. And then a different floral material in the base. And there's actually 3 vases there stacked up together. And this is kind of a traditional Sogetsu polymer type vases that we can get when we're in Japan at the school or at a good Japanese vase shop. So, next one. And this is another of the flower arrangements there at that exhibition in Woodinville, Washington. And they come from the whole West Coast there to study when Kwana Sensei is in town. And Sensei means teacher. And you can see that baby's breath is a very good medium or type of flower in Japanese flower arrangements. And they changed weight of the flowers or the size of the flowers, which our Western style judges may not like as well, that much of a gradient change. But I'm also a Western flower arranging judge too, so I do see a bit of different things.
It's interesting to see that much of a mass of baby's breath, I
I
think.
know.
Yeah, because mostly, I guess I would expect, like one stick.
No, they really do add it to flower arrangements in mass style. So it is interesting, the difference. When I showed you that one with the brambles in it, it reminds me of when I go there, I fly in from Minnesota, and I can have them purchase the materials for me, and I can borrow their vases. So the people coming in from that area and bringing their own stuff have that advantage of being able to think about the themes and what we're going to be working on. I have to pick the materials and the vase, considering them together, and then put it together in a very short time. So I have a friend that has or did have when she lived here, she now lives out in that area, a beautiful piano room, a very big Steinway type piano. And she had a pianist who was in town playing come out to her place, and he was playing the piano and having us lay on the floor underneath it, listening to it. And then he said his teacher had him play Rain and had him play, I'm trying to think of it because it's what I tried to, Wind. And to me, being a landscaper and growing plants like all of you, wind terrifies me in the summertime when it's real strong like it has been of late, breaking these trees and all kinds of things. So I found some materials to really do that, and I thought I did a good job. And the teacher really told me off. Wind in Japanese, it means airy, and is one of the highest attributes you can do. And my trying to show my fear is not really allowed. And you can have beautiful flowers and beautiful vases and still not make a beautiful flower arrangement, and especially when it was showing not beauty. So I learned quickly. But when I go to a workshop like that, I don't mind making mistakes, because then I can come back and teach about it. That's what sticks in my mind the most, and I can share that with others. So on this one that was just being shown, there's some aspidistra leaves, and it looked like a little bit of maybe like mother-in-law's tongue or that. But we had a different school come to the Art Institute a few decades ago, and it was Michel Rio Anke, and I got to study some of that in Japan. And it is a very traditional school, and the headmaster held workshops, but he was working on a long aspidistra leaf that he had brought from Japan, and working on the edge of it, and I asked him what he was doing, and he says, beetle, me, beetle. And when we have a flower arrangement or anything judged, if it's not perfect, not in the best condition, points are taken off. But in Japan, they're working more with the environment, working more with nature, and they can allow that. Having it show that, it's been out there and surviving the elements. And another time, when Teshigahara was here doing the Dayton Bachman show, he took the aspidistra leaves and he put gold foil on them, many of them, as it was along the path that we would walk through bamboo later. So there's many different ways you can work with aspidistra. I grow it in containers. I grow a number of my different materials. And you can just take your fingernail and go down with the ribs of that, and I've used it for a rooster tail in many different ways. So it's a great green plant material to work with, and would go really fine with roses. Even just curled And what I wanted to bring tonight, and I didn't, is I stapled some leaves together when we went to Chicago for a show one time. And the headmaster saw the staple. And now they have those little round things that are like double-side stick-on tape. And you can just use that and put it in there, and it doesn't show off if you want to do a fold in your leaves or do some different mechanic that way. And it works really well. So here's another vase that has water showing. And a lot of times in our arrangements, we move materials out of ways. What I like about Ikebana is that it stresses smaller amounts of materials where you can really see the flower and its beauty. But I think there's more tension in it. It's not a mass arrangement where everything is close together. And in Japanese, there's a term called mu, M-U, and it means nothingness. And one night we were having a discussion when I was taking those lessons there. And with mu being nothingness, it means there's full potential. And there was a woman doing artwork at the Art Institute, and the term is kind of losing me, but it's the void. And that has parameters, that has restrictions on it. So when you have open space, it gives you a little bit of chance of enjoying the space more, but thinking too what you might do different or something, sunlight coming through there and reaching you in a different manner. There's all different types of ways of experiencing some openness in the flower arrangements. This is my Art in Bloom piece last year, and I want to remark a little bit on it, and her picture will be in there. But my student, Jenny's son, just moved to California, and I knew this last year. So when I was able to pick the wooden gate that she went to China 3 times for in 2002 to procure for Robert Jacobson, who is the past curator of the Chinese galleries. And so she helped me pick out which vase I was going to use. And then we used red and yellow as celebratory colors, like I did in my arrangement again this year. But we were able to name for the friends, it was their 100th anniversary last year, to name this dahlia in their honor. So it's called Friends Centennial. And my husband, Larry, started in February to grow the dahlia. So we had 6 potted plants with dahlias, and I had 13 blooms for the 5 days, 6 days actually set up. And they weren't as long stemmed as we usually grow them, so I placed them lower than what I normally would do, and there's a branch in there too. But the celebratory colors are there, and then the branch echoes some of the wood. And that wooden gate is the main gallery entrance from the Buddha section now. And it was in storage till 2015, and she got it in 2002. And she thinks that part of it went to California to be repaired, but I think we have a big picture of it yet coming up. And it's from northern China, where it's drier. The other entrance going into the Jade Corridor is stone, and that's from southern China. So a lot of difference in it. So you can see a bit of the gate carving in that on the corner of it, but how mammoth it is. And she thinks it really should have larger stones on the base of it. Mm-hmm. And there's a bit of carving in it that's quite beautiful. So our museum now has gained the reputation. There's Jenny there. And she just took off the end of April, so just moving in, and she had some gallery of Chinese art and antiques. And it was very difficult for her to move because she still had a lot of the antiques. So the movers came and she had 5 guys, 2.5 days cleaning out part of the house and moved into a house half the size of what she had in Bloomington in California. So she's giving me a lesson. She says, if you haven't used it in the last year, take it to Goodwill. That's what they're spending their time doing. But we are equivalent to the Met, and we're equivalent to the Nelson Atkins Art Museum now in Kansas City. This one is done by Janine Ray, and she did take some Ikebana lessons with me. And the little boat in the front, which is in the painting, is mine. And she filled it with little flowers at the base of it, and then combined 2 larger vases that were made by a good friend of hers who was going to China, and luckily he passed away here by heart attack a few years back. And he was an assistant professor of ceramics at a university there in St. Paul, and he's done a lot of research on the mill where they beat up the clay and do different things in China, the whole process, and we're hoping that will be released someday. But the vases themselves really picked up the color and the form of the mountains in the backdrop, and then the boat in the foreground and the clouds above it. So it's a nice arrangement that way, and being more horizontal. So this is one of the Japanese ones from this year, and you can see the use of the wood, and then more massing of flowers near the base of it in around Japanese vase. Interesting contrasts. This is one I did for and I'm trying to think of the word of Japanese ink writing and doing pictures.
Calligraphy.
Yeah, part calligraphy, but it goes a little bit beyond it. So that's a Japanese maple that I grow, and then some of the dahlias, and the next picture shows a better angle of it, if they're in order. And
Oh.
what I learned from taking lessons at Color and Drum, that cleanliness is next to godliness when it comes to vases and all the materials you use. So I used to use Paladin tablets in my glass vases to keep the minerals out of it, and I would put it in my ceramic vases too. But now I just use white vinegar, sometimes organic vinegar, to clean them. And as soon as I'm home, I'm cleaning vases and putting them away. And fortunately, but unfortunately, I have a son that makes vases, and I have a son that does metalwork. So I don't even want to tell you the number of vases I have in my house to clean this year. And I have some of those ends too that I love. So when I mention vases like that, it's that the vase is more important usually in an Ikebana arrangement than what it is in a Western style. And this is why they were saying do 90% fresh flowers and live materials, and it kind of bothered me. You know, I didn't want to push that limit this year. This little arrangement here is kind of fun too, is their pears that have the orchid tubes in them. And you can use that for table settings. I've done a number, and I took this to one of our Ikebana Christmas parties, and everyone got to make their own little vase to take home with materials. So it's temporary, but it's fun to do, and roses would look lovely in it too, and with some sprays of evergreens at the winter time. This is one of my arrangements at the Dahlia show at the State Fair, and I don't mean to have the ribbons in there, but that's all I had on that. And taking branches and making form out of them is fun to do with some of the dahlias and using the kinzans. And I want to talk about this dahlia because it is so beautiful, and I actually got the top award in the specimen side with it this past year and beat out all 3 top awards, so that's unusual for me. I'm an arranger, I'm not a specimen person, but it's Bloomquist Jean, and our plant was about 3 feet taller than Larry in the garden. And these blooms are just exquisite with the twisting and turning, you know, it's an informal deck. And then that's one of my son's faces, and some of the materials. Most of everything I use, I grow from the branches to the additional materials with them. So there's another form of ikebana called chabana, and it's done for tea ceremony. And Don is one of the teachers at Como, and they're just cleaning up the tea room now to resume doing flower arranging. And how it varies is that it's done by more common plant materials that are growing around us in nature, not going to the florist to buy the most perfect ones. So some of the wild roses are, you know, more garden type would be nice in there too. And when I was invited to be part of a flower show in Japan during 9/11, my teacher corrected my arrangement, his teacher corrected the arrangement, and the headmaster corrected the arrangement. So it had to be perfect for the show. And then each morning they suctioned all the water out of the vases and put fresh water in so that they would be in good condition for the public. So that was quite an experience. This is Don and Karen Ingby's finished chabanas. So chabanas are the tea flower arrangements, and they did a really great job on them.
And do they teach that at Como?
They teach the tea ceremony, they have people come in, but I think it's a year or so out to get a reservation if that's still happening. And then the Como Mum Show that I've chaired a number of times is in November, and it's usually the first or second week, but they take the bonsai out to clean them, and then we get to use the room for Ikebana Mum arrangements. And it's really challenging because the windows have an awful lot of light and heat. And one time we had to start on Tuesday, not Monday, because of the snow on the steps and everywhere. So it's a challenging time of year. But chrysanthemums are very important in arrangement. So this is just an arrangement in the entryway for Ikebana holiday summer social. And Millie did ours last year, and we had just a great time at Millie's new place.
Yeah, a wonderful time.
Yeah, very good hostess. And so this is one of my arrangements in the Mum Show last year. We had 10 people to do 16 arrangements. And we had a hard time getting things set up again after it being closed the year before for the pandemic. So I just wanted to do mine simple and bold, and this is one of them. So there's some different ones in there too. I did 3. This is one of mine where I've taken the cycad and made a sculptural form out of it. And then I ran the little garden mums that I had behind it or in it, as kind of a peekaboo. And what it doesn't show real well there is there's actually 2 holes, and I only used one. And I was invited to be part of kind of like a cookie bake-off, but it was flower arrangements at the Northern Clay Center, and we used potter's vases there. And the potter had made a number of holes in his vase, and I only used a couple. And he was really upset with me because I didn't use all of them. So that was kind of funny on that. But, yeah. So the cycad, you know, goes back millions of years. It's one of the oldest plants on the planet. And it's very stiff, and I formed it, and it's been like that for a while. But there is a garden in Japan that has a number of these cycad plants. And I had taken one from an office garden that I was working on and gave it to Como's conservatory, and it's now about 25 feet tall in there. So they can grow exponentially, and mine is getting over the reach of my hands with the leaves going out. So luckily it can winter in the garage, because Larry wouldn't take it in the house. And this is another one with a sculpture that I did, and using the magnolia leaves within there. But the metal sculpture has a plate on the bottom, and then the small black vase is from Japan that holds the mums and the magnolia leaves in there, and creates a different type of space. And I did check through a lot of picture things to be sure that the metal was okay to use like that, and it's seen in other renditions. So we had this woman come from Japan and do a demonstration on a number of vases at Kohler and Drown. And you can see how she's very beautiful in her yukata during the summertime, and working with the larger materials in that. Her daughter is going to college in our area, and we got to have her show us many different ideas. But already starting in that big tall vase, and you know, if you go 1.5 times, how big are you going to get, or are you going to go sideways? There's a lot of things for her to choose on the spot again, and it was fun to see. So I'm ending with my fall-winter arrangement, and this is Nandina. It's called Heavenly Bamboo in parts of Japan or in Shanghai. And in Shanghai, they go to the markets wanting it in the fall. We can buy the green form, and I grow a plant of it, but the berries come on in the fall. So it works with the vase and with the branch, and I just have to dust it. I don't have to water it, and you know, it does hold the table quite well. And that will just show the berries. So are there any questions?
Do the berries actually stay on all winter?
Yeah.
So when you dust it, they don't just fall off?
Well, if I let it dry at the proper moment, yes. If you let it go too dry, then it can be that. Or maybe the second or third year they can drop berries.
Wow.
So it's really kind of fun. I want to just quickly do a little bit of how we do the basic flower arrangement. And like Millie said, I should have gotten roses today, but I didn't have the opportunity. So I wanted to share with you something that I've had along the driveway is 2 bushes of this, it's called Lotus Moon Pearl Bush. And the flowers, when they come out, they look just like a pearl. They're very tight, very lovely, very shiny. And the disadvantage of them is if it rains, they go into like crepe paper and they get kind of mushy. So they have the advantage of having dahlia umbrellas over them this time of year in the rainy season when it does rain. So, and I don't know if I moved my flowers somewhere. Yeah, they're here. hiding under everything. So some of the schools in Japan have different scissors, but when I was going out to Seattle, they were using this type of scissor, and it works real well in the garden for cutting herbs and cutting blooms and branches that are small. So it's a nice one to have. And I went out today and I cut some of the Russian hawthorn. So I could use that for the branch, and then the flowers. And I usually cut underwater on everything, but when I demonstrate, I sometimes just go dry, so I can take them apart quickly and let you move on with your meeting and load them up again. And so I don't have it with me right now. So what we do is we take the tip of our material and we measure the height. We go across the width and we get that. And I had one student that wanted to measure with a tape measure, but what we're doing is we're training our eyes and our hands on working with the materials and what the materials can do with us. And then we go half again is length, and we add just a little bit for going inside of the leaves. And then on our branches, we cut on the diagonal. And then on our flowers, we cut them usually straight across. But roses are kind of woody, so I often cut them on the diagonal so that they can get more. And then we're looking for the tip. And this is going to go in the back section, leaving just a 1/4 inch for the piece we're going to put behind that now gives depth to the arrangement. And what I was looking and studying to see, when I put my branch down into the needles, I go straight down in it, and water would keep that a little bit more stable for me. And then I go 10 degrees forward or 15, and 10 or 15 degrees to the side. And when we do the beginning books, what we're actually doing is making our leaves and stuff look up towards the sun when we can. This one I took a side branch, so it's looking a little bit more at you. And then when we get into book 5, it's more for demonstrations and doing larger arrangements. And then we have it facing out towards the audience. And flowers always have a mind of their own, so we try to respect that. And this one doesn't want to stay in there. So I'm going to cut it again, and not so sharp, or sharper. And I always say that when something breaks, it gives you an opportunity to make something different. You know, not to get overly upset about it. Another reason why I like to demonstrate keeping it a little bit dry is I can lift it up and show you the pattern it makes at the end. And I do that when I teach at Color and Draw. And that one's heavy-handed. So the next one I do upside down, and then I about 3/4 and just a little bit to go into the vase again. And this one's pretty heavy, so usually we do a little bit more pruning afterwards, but I'm going to do some of it now because that will sway it a bit too. And we're taught to do it from behind for the audience, but when I'm teaching it, I find that's confusing to the student because my right hand becomes their left hand, so sometimes I forego that. And the next corner is in the front, and it's 45 degree. From the center and to the side. And when I'm standing on the other side and doing it for myself, I can point them towards my shoulders. And this one doesn't want to behave because it's top heavy. So. And then I'm not going to fool around too much because you've been real patient with me tonight and I appreciate that. And are there any questions on doing mass or freestyle arrangements?
I had just a general question.
Sure.
So if you're doing Sogetsu style, what's the difference if it's more in Japan versus China? Or would you be doing it?
I was going to tell you that, so thank you. I've done a couple things for Chinese people. Like I even did a Chinese Jewish wedding, which was a lot of research.
Interesting.
And if you read on the handout and different things are in the information you're getting, is Japanese style is more asymmetrical.
Okay.
Chinese is much more symmetrical. They like to use like the peonies, you know, the auspicious flowers in that, and the colors. And if you have, any of you, the opportunity in the next 2 days while the show is still on, the bronze exhibition at MIA is really fantastic. It's done by Tim Yep, who did Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and it's all experiential. I mean, it's just breathtaking. You have to be very aware and aware of yourself and where you are in the space too, because the first room is quite dark. There's music playing. It has the only written material in it through the whole exhibition of at least 5 rooms. And there's 150 pieces of bronze, and they spent more money on the lighting than imaginable. And there's mirrors. So the first room, you go in there and it looks like there's a pool in the center and all these proverbs on the walls. And you look up and there's painting up above and then some little things hanging from it. And you look down into the pool and it's mirrors and it looks like you're looking down 2 stories. And then you walk through cloth as you're leaving there, and you look to your right, and it looks like you're looking down the whole corridor of all the rooms because of the placement of mirrors. So there's mirrors, there's playing with lighting off the glass on these cases. There's 150 bronzes that are exquisite in cases that you normally wouldn't be able to see the inside of them. But because of the mirror and reflections in the glass walls, you can see so much, and you can see repetition of so much from the genius of this person. And we have a very active Chinese Heritage Foundation in the Twin Cities. So what I did now, I'll interrupt myself, is I did about 3/4 of this for this corner one on the Hikai. So this in common terms is heaven, earth, and man, or Shin, Soi, Hikai. And then I do 2 more. And what I was looking at first is what is the most beautiful one to be the one that comes out straight. And it can be a little bit shorter. But the exhibit ends on Sunday and it's really, really special. And what the Chinese Heritage Foundation did is they took a classical Chinese book called The Story of the Red Chamber, or also known as The Story of the Stone. And they had the San Francisco Opera Company do that. And this Tim Yep provided the staging for it. And they went back again last year, and they were thinking of having him come and do textiles, because he's never done museums before this one. He's done both film and operas and things like that, but it's really, really special. It slows you down looking at everything, and slows your senses down, and you kind of walk out of there looking at the world a little differently. You don't have to spend an awful lot of time in it, but it is experiential. It is really something amazing. And the Dream of the Red Chamber will come to Northrop next fall, 2024, from San Francisco. And you know, red roses could be nice for that too. The rose is the city flower for Ibaraki, the sister city of Minneapolis. And my friend's mother lived to be almost 100, and you know, they do like white flowers for funerals or memorial services. But they credited her for a long life and a good family and running a business and different things like that. She had over 50 red bouquets at her funeral service. It was really beautiful. So what we have here is that we have one triangle of the base part of the arrangement in the kenzan, and we have another triangle here, and then we have a third triangle in the flowers. So, and we can put little pebbles on there. We can do many different things to cover the kenzan. In the summer, I like to fill my vases right up to the top to have that cooling quality, and then I can lower it more for the winter. And like I say, I've used petals moving around in there sometimes, and petals of the flowers. It sounds like I might have said pebbles, but it's just really fun to play with different ways. But you have to remember when you do your arrangements for your shows that the judges are supposed to stand 3 feet in front of the arrangement. So I always go back to double check that right before they're judged, because you don't know if something happened and moved them a little bit, or if you forgot something along the way. That really helps on shows. So,
Could you speak a little bit as to the symbolism of the color of the roses, either with the Chinese?
Well, the Chinese is a lot celebration. I have had lists of the meaning of the rose itself and of the colors, but I can't draw all of it off my head right now. I'm a little bit slower until I get back into the flowers themselves. But red has more energy, is more stimulating, you know, and it's, I think, kind of to a traditional flower. If one of the things I studied when I was in the university is that roses have the highest frequency of the plant kingdom. So that's why rose is used a lot medicinally, you know, therapeutically. And the orchid has the highest DNA. It's the most evolved plant in that manner.
What do you mean frequency for roses?
The vibrational quality of it.
Okay.
And how that works in some of the different non-traditional things, like I'm trying to think of what we take. But the other thing is we've been blessed with this wonderful new daughter-in-law for 5 years now, and she's from Iran, and she's a chemical engineer, and our youngest son is a chemist too. So the The rose that you gave me, Lois Ann, is that, my mind's going blank. The ones that they use so much
Or
of.
the damask,
Pardon?
the damask rose.
Or they get Rose of Ottar or whatever that's called.
Yeah, it's partly our altar, but it's, my mind's just leaving me. The one from the Middle East,
The damascena.
yeah, Damascene. And, you know, they use that so much in their food and culture, and their food is just so healthy. They're doing a Persian cooking class on YouTube, and like their frittata has 6 cups of herbs in it. And I do a celery stew with 6 cups of herbs, and being
Rose
chemists is,
originally came from Henry Najad, who was Persian.
yeah. So it's really fascinating to see the diet of them, and they just want us to travel there and eat with them, and it's a real pleasure. Our son started cooking at 2. He had 4 dozen eggs out, a pan going on the stove, the buzzer going, and he was watching TV. You know, so it is quite a combination. But thank you for inviting me tonight and putting up with my on again, off again, but my great helper who's brought us through it. So thank you. And any questions?
Do you generally try to cover the kenzans, or is it a certain types of ikebana that you cover the kenzans more?
The reason why these flowers are down at 70 degrees is that it blocks the view of the kenzan quite a bit, depending on the lip of the vase.
So that would be considered sufficient generally, or not?
And like Ardith Beveridge, who, you know, I replaced at Cola and Durham, used to say, you don't even see that. You don't put your mind on that.
Right.
You know, standing 3 feet back, and especially if you bring the water up, you know, then that doesn't show it as much. And you wanna, you know, I left this one in here, but you don't want anything more in there than you need.
Correct.
You know, so that helps. But you can also, they're called jushi, you can put little asters low down in here. What we try to do is put everything within that triangle I showed you. So if you're going to use other little things to cover the plant material, to cover that, is that you stay within that angle, and that helps.
Is there a good place locally to get the kenzans?
Como has sold some in the past, but I may be starting some new students, and if you want to ask Lois Ann, you know, I think I have a couple yet too. If you want to experience them, but with everything, I don't know, I was using my Falco pruners one time at the state fair late at night, flower arranging with sandals on, and I dropped, almost cut my toe off, you know. And a lot of these scissors, if you do a 3-point cut here, it's just not fun as it slows to heal. So there's always that real wide respect for that. And the Misha Ryo Anke school kind of talks about everything being part of the flower arrangement, from you to your scissors to your spot, your vases. There's, like I say, that the heaven, earth, and man is part of kind of a spiritual meaning. And Ikebana means ikuru, and bana is for hana. When you take hana for flower and connect it with a verb, they put a B in there. And ikuru can also mean, besides what your information often is said, is transformation. That your transformation is part of working with the flower. You know, transforming the flowers would also transform yourself. You know, there's a large tie, because Japan is so crowded in ways, but the population tends to go along the edges of the country, and they have beautiful bamboo mountains and stuff that have different places up in there, and, you know, I'm trying to think of the moss garden, I think it's Saihoji, where you go in and you do a arrangement and clear your mind and stuff before you see the gardens. You know, so it's a practice of, really when you get into it, I think, and you don't worry about anything, because you know something will come and help you. And you're not competing, you know, the competition for me is getting it done. You know, if I create an idea, how do I follow it through and get it done? And one of the times when we were with a really wonderful older teacher, she had survived the war and lost her husband, and she taught for many, many years. I'm losing train of thought of what I was going through about her, but she just was that gentle kind of person that really everything and everyone was important to her, and I think that's part of it. And to me, competing is solving my creative problem. And my feeling right now, and I've been expressing it, is I think after the pandemic and everything, is that we need beauty, we need creativity, and we need community. And this helps bring us all together. So thank you.
Thank you.